Time to talk tech. Our buddy Kris is here to chat about all things nerdy, all things awesome. You can check out Kris on the Twitter as well. He likes to share this conversation out there. Kris, how can everyone get you on the Twitter?
You can find me at Real Kris Abel. That's KrisAbel.
Your parents, you didn't talk to them and say, hey, by the way, this is bad marketing for my future self, folks, when I got to always respell my name.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
No, you can tell that there was no indication I was ever going to end up being a public figure at all. I mean, yeah, but it's nice to have a name that's different. That's always good.
It is. It's a fantastic name, and it does stick out. Trust me, when you can read it, it stands out. It's good that way. It's good. Anyway, follow Kris on X, and you can get connected with all the things. Now, Kris, you are of a similar vintage as I am. That means you know the true mixtape, the true dub the cassette, and all of those things. So tell me, where are we going for this very first piece about mixtapes and more?
We're dealing with Apple's take in terms of celebrating the Lunar New Year, which of course is approaching. I think it's next week. And to help celebrate, because of course they've got a big investment in terms of the Chinese market, the Apple stores over there are doing very, very well. They have released a 12-minute film celebrating the Lunar New Year for the Chinese market. It's called Made a Mixtape for You. And now this is part of the Shot on iPhone series. So Apple often releases little tiny videos where they've hired a director or somebody to come out and shoot something, and they say, look, this was all done on an iPhone. A lot of those films, they're nice, but they kind of come and they go and they're easy to forget. What I loved about this one, called I Made a Mixtape for You, which is free on YouTube and does have English subtitles, it to me was really stood out as being really, really creative. I love that it's a musical of all the hit classic songs from the 1990s. You've got fantastic dance choreography, wonderful acting, and this really fun story of a young man who finds an old audio cassette tape. It's a mixtape. He pops it into an old retro cassette player and then gets transported, time travels back to the 1990s. And while he's investigating this world, people are out celebrating the Lunar New Year. They're dancing in the streets. He ends up meeting a nice young woman. They get engaged in terms of dancing and talking. And you have all this wonderful rift between the fact that they're in different time zones. And she's in a world where iPhones don't even exist yet. And so you have these fun conversations where she turns to him and says, can you give me some change so I can make a phone call? And he's looking at her like, huh? What? And, you know, he asks, is this a flash mob that's going on? And she's looking at him like, what are you talking about? What's a flash mob? I even love it when she writes her phone number on his hand as a way to give it to him. He's just kind of absolutely confused by it. So it's a fun little film to check out. You can see it for free on YouTube. It's called on the Apple YouTube channel, Made a Mixtape for You. And it really stood out to me as being particularly fun and creative from Apple.
That's great marketing and connective, and they're inserting a lot of marketing into the Chinese market generally. Now, it's not specifically just for China; it is for North Americans as well that maybe subscribe to the faith systems or maybe have some Chinese lineage in their family, or just like the culture because they've branded a couple of things like they've done in the past, but more directly, I think this time with the logo and the AirPods and all that stuff.
Oh. Yes, they do this every year. They always come out with the zodiacal animal of the year. They usually have a small little engraving they put on their AirPods. But this year, for the year of the wood snake, I thought, man, they changed the actual Apple logo, and it looks fantastic. It is a snake that has coiled itself up in such a way so that it's got all the shapes and the outline of the actual Apple logo. I thought, wow, this is really creative. And this is something that harkens back to the early days of Apple themselves. We haven't seen that for a few decades. So it's nice to see it come back. But you're right. In the Asian markets, they've released a special edition of the AirPods 4 that comes with the little Apple snake packaging, but also has an engraved emoji of a small little snake. He's very enthusiastic. There's energy lines and stars. It's fantastic. What I like is that getting that special edition costs no different than the regular AirPods 4. It's the same price. It's just when you're buying it in the China store or in Singapore, you can have the option of getting the engraving put on it. Now, sadly, those AirPods aren't available here in North America. I'm a bit confused by that because we have a huge Asian population. I think it totally could support it. And of course, there are freight forwarding companies you can get so that you can have them shipped to you from China if you wanted them. But it's worth just going and searching the AirPods online just to see the emblem that they put on it because it's very creative. I think Apple's done a fantastic job.
On the Apple site, they do have, some of the exchanges will do that, right? They'll like you can send it to it. I think the link you'd sent was Kuala Lumpur or something, but it's just at apple.com. Yeah,
there are several Asian markets where it's available, but there are freight forwarding companies that once you purchase in an Asian market, you can then have it shaped or shipped to your place. I do this oftentimes with a lot of things that I find in Japan that I want. I can have it shipped right to me in Canada. It's great. So there are ways of getting your hands on this. But yes, I do hope that Apple in the future will start to actually offer it. If you go to the Apple store, there are Year the Snake products, not by Apple themselves, but by other companies that are available. So Apple does carry those products. It's worth checking out.
It is interesting. Actually, one thing, Kris, I would like to pin with you is that I would like to talk with you about your love affair for Japan, because I know that it carries a special place in your heart in a lot of ways with some of the different products and series that come out of there. So we should talk about that one day, just for the sake of throwing that out there. I look forward to that one.
Of course. Okay.
There are things great, right? There are some things you can get, though, not Apple things that are being branded, which I do get curious over the cultural appropriation thing versus just good marketing. This stuff doesn't seem to be getting shut down online, right? But so it seems to be working and it seems to be quite successful. What else can we get?
Well, this is the interesting part. Marshall, who's known for creating professional speakers used by musicians and bands. Most of the bands you've seen in concert, they'll have huge Marshall stacks of speakers on them. They've actually come out with a special Lunar New Year, Year the Snake speaker. And in fact, they've got a professional stack for musicians, but they also have the consumer model of their Marshall speaker. It costs $290. This is a small rechargeable Bluetooth speaker you can put on your desktop. What they've done is they reached out to a Chinese artist. He calls himself Dark Question. He happens to also be a guitarist. His specialty is creating art that is based off of vintage packaging of old firecrackers. He takes that and he adds a rock and roll sort of mystique to it. And then he's come up with all this artwork that they used to decorate the Marshall speaker systems for what they're calling their Wood Snake edition. I also love that the consumer version has an orange and green kind of snake-like sort of feel to it. So this is something that is available here in Canada. $290 is what they're charging for the consumer model on it. And yeah, it's interesting. They've even released a small video online that has an animation of an all-girl rock band going on tour, the Wood Snake Tour. They call themselves the Wood Snakes. And they've got fantastic music and artwork, again, by this Chinese artist, Dark Question.
I love it. It's fantastic, by the way. The stack is great. It's got that retro flair to it. It's beautiful stuff. I don't care. I think it's great. I think it's respectful, and I think it's just darn awesome. It's great. Kris Abel, thank you very much for being here. As always, we'll chat with you next week.
Yeah, take care.
Awesome. Okay, Real Kris Abel, if you want to find out on X and hear this back and share it, or on our podcast, Shane Hewitt in the Night Shift.